Hi, everyone. I'm Hannah. I'm the Open Research Development Librarian at the University of Essex, and I'm going to speak about quite a specific situation we've been having in the last kind of 12 months at Essex around Diamond Open Access. So first of all, just some really quick context for those of you who aren't aware about Essex at all. We're a dual intensive university, so we focus on excellence in research and education, and we have 3 faculties: arts and humanities, social sciences, and science and health. And we've got quite strong arts and humanities and especially social sciences faculties. So a lot of what I'm going to be speaking about today is quite focused on Diamond in the context of long form publications, because it is something that our academics are really interested in because of that kind of more social sciences, arts and humanities focus. Like lots of other universities, we've had quite strict budget cuts over the past 12 months, and this has led to a quite wholesale subscriptions review for us in the library. We've had lots of different cancellations and reprioritising of budgets, and it did mean that we had to cancel one of the 2 Diamond Open Access packages that we were able to be supporting, much to my upset. And also, we have no designated part of the library budget for open access. So it was kind of because of that, that when we were having to make these cuts, Diamond Open Access packages were one of the first things to go. And one of the first decisions that was made was that we wouldn't be able to support any further Diamond Open Access packages. But we do have quite a lot of support for open access more generally. We have 19 read and publish agreements paid for jointly from our subscriptions budget and the UKRI block grant. And we also have a generous institutional open access fund, which we brought in last year. But this fund is exclusively to be used for BPCs and APCs at the moment, so not for Diamond Open Access. So I wanted to speak a bit more about that. Basically, the Institutional Open Access Fund comes directly from our QR allocation, so quality research funding from the last REF. And it was really positive because it shows investment in open access, and it was a really great achievement to get this fund. We didn't previously have any funding for open access in this way. But when we were making the argument for this fund, our PVC research and Vice-Chancellor were very heavily focused on this idea of tangible benefits, where they really wanted to make sure this money was being spent in a way that was directly related to Essex research and Essex researchers. And the easiest way for them to see that clear link was through APCs and BPCs. So that was how we ended up in the situation that we're in. It is quite a generous fund. We had last year approximately £242,000. I feel like I said that wrong, but I didn't. And it has almost doubled for this year. So it is a lot of money to be spending on BPCs and APCs. It's a lot of work to try and spend that money. Last year, we did underspend by around £20,000, which we thought was quite good for the first year of the fund, considering how much we had. But my real hope with this was that we were going to be able to spend that leftover money on Diamond Open Access models at the end of the financial year. Unfortunately, despite my best efforts, we weren't able to do that. And so we had to go to a different scenario where we were trying to use end of year spend from our collections development budget, so a library budget, instead for Diamond Open Access. I've put here a very frustrating situation, and I think that's underselling it. It was very frustrating to be in a situation where we had been speaking about and raising the awareness of these Diamond Open Access models for a long time, trying to avoid this exact situation we ended up in, where it was last minute solutions needed, last minute money to be spent. But that was the situation we were in, and the financial situation at the university really exacerbated that, because it was just so hard to get a seat at the table with anyone to talk about these kind of issues when there were so many other financial conversations going on. But some practical issues we had with that was, these seem like silly things, and that's kind of the point. We needed new suppliers to be set up on our finance system. We simply didn't have enough time to do that. We decided we would support some Diamond OA models that were available via JISC, because we then wouldn't need to set up a new supplier. But our finance team wouldn't let us do this, as the way that the invoices were presented made it look as if they were subscriptions. And if they were subscriptions, payments would need to come from the next financial year. So generally, there was just quite a lack of understanding, I guess, around Diamond Open Access models and what they really mean and what the purpose is. But I think what you're probably all thinking is, isn't open access about more than this? Shouldn't it be a bigger conversation than whether we can get the suppliers set up or whether the invoices are for subscriptions or not? And I would definitely agree, yes. And this is where the frustration really lied. So what I'm trying to do and what we're trying to achieve at Essex to achieve this kind of Zen relaxation mode is going forward, we really want to focus on the bigger picture and focus on what's actually important with open access. So within my team and more broadly in the library, we're trying to assess more what our priorities are, trying to draw up some red lines around open access and subscriptions, thinking about what are we happy to keep supporting, what do we not want to keep spending our money on, and what do we actually want to achieve with our budgets and with the power that we have to make this change in scholarly publishing. We're also thinking about engaging the right people at the right time. There's a variety of different people that come into this. Our kind of content team within the library, colleagues in our research office thinking about the ref and Diamond Open Access potentially being something to include in people, culture and environment statements. But also senior leaders thinking about when we want to include them, what information they need to know, how we can get them interested, and researchers themselves. So getting some advocates for Diamond Open Access from our research community, I think will be a really powerful voice to have. So generally, we really want to focus on a culture shift and make open more the default and not be spending money at the end of the financial year just because we've got it left, but it to be something that we're really committed to. And I've put this bit in bold here because I've spoken on this quite a few times in various places, but I'm really passionate about that. If we want to make change, if we want to see change in the way scholarly publishing works, we need to be brave enough to actually make changes. That might mean that we have to cancel some subscriptions, we have to redirect some funds, maybe upset some people in the short term. But ultimately, we've got to be brave enough to do that in order to achieve the change we all keep saying we want. There's lots of open research statements and things, but I don't always see the action to go alongside that. So I wanted to end on some practical solutions. And some small steps we can take. The first two are really small and they're kind of just bugbears of mine. Please, to suppliers, please make it clear on invoices that Diamond Open Access models are not subscriptions. And for libraries, I think we can all make sure that we're setting up those suppliers early, a silly thing, but a lesson I've learned. But bigger picture, we really want to focus on value for money when it comes to talking about Diamond Open Access. And I don't want to be flippant about the crisis that we're in at the moment because there are lots of serious things happening, obviously. But I think we can take the kind of approach of let's not waste this crisis. And if one good thing that can come out of it could be that we are able to have those conversations more widely on how Diamond Open Access is so much better value for money, it might be the perfect time to be having those conversations. And finally, I just wanted to say that highlighting the issues of not supporting Diamond Open Access, I think is also really important. So the kind of unsustainability of APCs and BPCs that Joe's already touched on. And also for arts and humanities and social sciences in particular, for those departments that are constantly having to prove their impact and their worth at the moment, can they really afford not to have their research outputs openly available when making research outputs openly available is such a key way to show impact and worth? And finally, I think probably the biggest risk of not supporting Diamond Open Access is that we come to get a situation where instead of having haves and have-nots for reading content, we end up with haves and have-nots for publishing content open access, where only those that can afford to pay APCs and BPCs are able to make their work available openly. So that's everything I wanted to talk about. Thank you. Feel free to get in touch